Maybe, you have been married for years, but more or less, you make some mistakes over and over again during sex without realizing them. Sometimes when having sex with your husband, you feel like you are doing the right thing, but that thing is actually not good for your husband. Those mistakes hinder you and your husband from enjoying the fullness of sex, and thereby gradually damp your zest for lovemaking. To keep sex alive in your marriage, be aware of these 8 common mistakes. Number 1. Feeling embarrassed or scared to try new things. Ask yourself whether you have ever come up with an idea to spice up sex, but eventually, you abandoned it because you were afraid of what your husband may think about it. Believe it or not, in most cases, your husband would like to try something new together with you in bed. And it is also likely that your husband may be just as embarrassed or uncomfortable about bringing new ideas as you are. If you both would not like to put forward new lovemaking ideas to improve your sex life, it tends to become stagnant. Hence, when it comes to how to keep sex alive in your marriage, a good way is to have a lot of fun lovemaking ideas at your disposal and share them with each other. As long as the two of you actively share lovemaking ideas with each other, you can have a fantastic sex life. When your lovemaking ideas are enough to lead you and your man to a world that is full of sexual fantasies, you may realize that you no longer need to resort to those adult toys to fulfill your wild sexual fantasies. So you might make the first move to come to your husband with new lovemaking ideas. Number 2. Trying to convince your husband to make love. When your husband is tired or just in no mood for sex, it is always hard to persuade or convince him to have sex. On the other hand, when she has an intense urge to have sex, she's body naturally releases the hormone, adrenaline, into the bloodstream so that she gets more motivation and energy to make love. Furthermore, it is also essential to choose the right way to sexually arouse your husband. Surely, even though your husband is tired, it is still possible to seduce him and get him in the mood for sex. Seduction techniques work much better than convincing or persuading, and in a marital relationship, sexual seduction should be thought of as an art towards attaining a fruitful relationship more than towards a selfish consideration or simply experiencing physical pleasure. If you want to learn more seduction techniques to please your husband into bed, click the 3rd link in the description and watch the free presentation on how to make a man sexually obsessed with you, and only you, without even touching him. Number 3. Neglecting pre-sex play. Foreplay is necessary for good sex but is often neglected. If you neglect foreplay and rush to have sexual intercourse, it will easily lead to a vague feeling of irritation as you or your husband may be not fully aroused. In a long-term relationship, a lack of orgasm or an orgasm imbalance is a common factor leading to resentment, frustration, and anger with one's partner. Having prolonged foreplay is one of the best ways to intensify orgasms and overall lovemaking experiences. It is undeniable that sometimes impromptu sexual intercourse without foreplay can be a good sexual experience. But generally, most people, especially most women who have a happy sex life, agree that good sexual encounters should start with plenty of foreplay. Foreplay does not only intensify the female orgasm, a vigilant form of foreplay can bring increased pleasure to both spouses, thereby making the whole experience more enjoyable. So don't skimp on sexual foreplay, instead, try to prolong foreplay before having sex with your husband. So, before sex, you might touch, kiss, and caress him, and you might try to tease him in a playful way. For example, when you find that your husband is enjoying doing something with you in bed, you might deliberately stop doing it suddenly, then move back and do it with him again later. A rule of thumb is that the more a husband pulls back and pushes forward before and during sex, the more intense the other one's sex desire becomes. In a word, don't skip foreplay, and when you are teasing your husband with foreplay, make a point to slow things down and take your time. Number 4. Using porn or sex toys to make your lovemaking better. There are times when your sex life hits a low point, and have you ever considered resorting to external things, e.g. a pornography video, and a sex toy, to drive your husband crazy instantly? But such an idea may be wrong. Although sex toys or porn can bring an added element of fun, playfulness, and exploration to your bedroom repertoire, it is dangerous to rely on them to change the situation. Sometimes this tactic can also backfire. The excessive reliance on those outside sources of pleasure can make lovemaking less fulfilling. The reason is that your husband may look forward to seeking more pleasure from porn or sex toys than from you. By the way, when you are using those adult toys, they inevitably feel crude, weird, or even dangerous. It is not a good way to keep sex in marriage alive, and it is also possible to bring variety into your passionate play in a way that makes each other comfortable. Sex toys and porn are dispensable for a marital relationship, and they only can be used as spice instead of the main course. So make sure you have discovered how to please your man's body parts without tools, even though you decide to introduce those external tools into your sex life. Number 5. Sticking to an established routine too often. When it comes to lovemaking, probably you know the drill well. You take off your clothes, have intercourse with your husband right away, and the routine is finished within a few minutes. Does it sound familiar? Lovemaking always feels fantastic in the beginning, but it tends to get boring as time passes. The reason is simple: while you are making love, the basic act seems the same. When your sex life gets too routine, your relationship suffers. The best way to prevent the quality of your sex life from declining is to try different lovemaking ideas. If you have an abundance of ideas ready and you can put them into practice, then you will be more likely to enjoy a hotter, more passionate and steamy lovemaking. Number 6. Assuming you know what your husband likes. Sex should be an experience both you and your husband should enjoy. And you cannot always read your husband's mind correctly. When you wrongly assume what your husband likes and dislikes in bed, it can be a turn-off for him. The foolproof method to understand what he wants in bed is to ask him plainly and simply. Of course, that is not to say you need to ask your husband every several minutes. In order to make the experience enjoyable for both of you, you need to ask him once in a while when you feel the need to improve your sex life. Furthermore, when making love, you might also promptly pay attention to your husband's body language to tell whether he likes something or not. Number 7. Ignoring your man's erotic zones. It is well known that being sensually touched by a man can get a lady hot. Actually, men also love to be touched sensually by their women. And you may forget or not realize that your husband would love you to pay attention to certain areas of his body. Many of those erotic areas are easy to find, like the inner thighs, lips, genitals, but maybe you haven't paid enough attention to them, and some of his erotic zones are not so easy to notice, but when they are caressed, stroked, or kissed, they can play a positive role in driving your husband wild and intensifying his orgasm. For example, maybe his hair, ears, and neck are his sensitive body parts that love to be stimulated. Those hidden zones can be a great source of erotic pleasure. Hence, you might spend some time discovering those erotic zones of your husband. Maybe you can't imagine how pleased he is to see you touch him. Number 8. Focusing on physical stimulation. Sex in marriage is never a one-night stand. Yes, we always have sex due to our physical instincts, but as a wife, if you just view sex as a physical act, you are missing a big picture. Don't neglect the emotional intimacy that you experience within the walls of marital sex. It is much more powerful and intimate than a kiss or an embrace. In a marriage, sex is also meant to amplify emotional intimacy between couples, so in this sense, sex contributes to a thriving relationship. You must have read many tips on how to get physical pleasure out of sex. However, in a marital relationship, a husband usually looks for more than that, and your man must also expect you to make lovemaking more emotionally intimate or emotionally intense. By deepening the emotional connection during sex, other parts of your relationship can get enhanced. Surely, it, in turn, makes sex more physically pleasurable. Therefore, while you are enjoying the physical pleasure of sex, make a point to make sex more emotionally fulfilling. So, remember, maintaining deep emotional intimacy is crucial to keep sex in marriage alive, and for that, I have a surprise for you. I have the free presentations that will give you more tips on how to ramp up your husband's emotional intensity towards you before and during sex. The second link in the description leads you to this presentation. The final word. A change in the habit of thinking and acting may bring a positive change in your sex life. The stale sex life needs a little spicing up, and it goes a long way towards maintaining a long-lasting relationship. If you want to get more tips on how to keep sex alive in your marriage, you might go on to watch the free presentation. The link is in the description.